Hi, I am Falk-Eliasson, and this is the presentation of my final project for the CCL course of 2019, distance course. So I wanted to start off with a short introduction. When I first did this climate change leadership plan, which was about investigating how much the Samis were included in the Swedish school curriculum. And I found this interest because this spring I did an internship at an NGO in Chile, where I was sucked into the conflict between the Chilean state and the indigenous population of Chile, or the largest one, called Mapuche. And I wanted to investigate how this relationship was between the Swedish state and our indigenous population, the Samis. And so I remember that I had never really been taught that much about the Samis in school, even though I was born into Sami land. I'm raised in Umeå, the Sápmi land like this. Umeå is here. Definitely it is part of my local history, and my father's history is from around here. And all of this, I mean, it built up during the fourth part of the CCL course, where we discussed during weeks 16 to 19, where we discussed climate change and indigenous knowledge and non-Western perspectives. I wanted to investigate just how many times are Samis mentioned in the curriculum of elementary school and secondary school. So this was the first step in a 5-step plan, and then make public awareness, etc., etc. The project starts off like this, and I presented with a quote: "The human understanding of the past is woven together with our conceptions about the present and perspective of the future." And this is from the curriculum for history. So the method of investigating this was that I searched through the curriculums for course plans in elementary school and subject plans in secondary school, gymnasium. In elementary school, I looked at history and societal knowledge, biology, geography, and religious knowledge. So what I did for each subject, I took the central content, I stated it like this, and then I looked at each central content and looked beneath it at other subtopics to see if Samis were specifically mentioned in these subtopics, and if they weren't, if they could have been included, like could have been implicitly mentioned or insinuated, if you talk about indigenous people, for example. So this is history, age group 1 to 3, so there's 7, 8, and 9 years old, the children here. Here's the quote that I had in the beginning. Here's the purpose of the subject, and here's the central contents. So for age group 1 to 3, to live together, that's this. And I found no mentioning of Samis, and I found 2 indirect inclusion. Now with indirect inclusion, I mean that perhaps this topic, to move within a country and between countries, what are the reasons and consequences? Within this, you could discuss Samis. That's what I mean with the indirect inclusion. I did these types of tables just to get a glimpse, an idea of how frequent are the mentionings of Samis in the curriculum, and where are openings to mention Samis more. In secondary education, I looked through 4 subjects: history, societal knowledge, religious knowledge, and nature knowledge. And the results I found 4 explicit mentionings of Samis in this curriculum for elementary school. There were 1 in history, 2 in societal knowledge, and 1 in religion. And in secondary education, there were none. You have the first mentioning in history. So this is history, and the central contents of history. You have the age group 1 to 3, 7, 8, 9-year-olds. Nothing about Samis. To live in the vicinity. You have nothing about Samis. The history of your city. Nothing. Christianity, the role of Christianity in school and at your local place. So Christianity specifically mentioned. The rise of humans, hunter-gathering, nothing about Samis. Stories about gods and heroes in antique and Nordic mythology. So you have Nordic mythology. Then you mention Christianity, Islam, Judaism, the Bible, and some Psalms. but nothing about Samis. You move on to age group 4 to 6, so they're 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. You talk about the ancient times and Middle Ages up until 1500s. The population of the North, Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. Like Viking travels and trade and migration, but nothing about Samis. Christianity in the North. Some European discoveries. The North and the Empire of Sweden. The Empire of Sweden. Trading, population growth, and nothing more. And what you should remember is the Viking era, Middle Age, the Empire Age, and the Freedom Age. So nothing. You have just told the history of Sweden, but you didn't mention Samis. You haven't mentioned them specifically in history for 6 years, even though you're telling the history of Sweden. So that's, to me, is striking. And then you mentioned them in here in the last age group. You talk about nationalism and democracy. You talk about oppression, genocide, the Holocaust and Gulag, but you don't say anything about racial biology and Samis. Colonialism and racism, but nothing specifically about colonialism of the north of Sweden. But finally, historical perspectives of the Samis and the other national minority situation in Sweden. But this is beneath the topic of democratization, post-war, and globalization from 1900s to present. So it's still weird. The next quote is within societal knowledge. You speak of the natives, Samis, and other national minorities of Sweden. And the other one in societal knowledge is the national minorities and the special stance of the Samis and what their special stance and rights are. So the Samis, they speak of the Samis more than other national minorities, but still it's from a rights perspective. And the other one was from a history, but like modern history of the Samis and how their situation is in Sweden today. Still haven't really been discussed the role in past ages. In biology, I found nothing. In geography, I found something about Swedish cultural landscapes. Where you could speak of how the Samis have treated the cultural landscapes of the north, but and in religion, the fourth finding, which is stories from old Scandinavian and older Sami religion. I just looked through how many times other religions are mentioned in the topic of religious knowledge in elementary school. And you see it's Christianity is mentioned 9 times, Nordic mythology 3, Sami religion 1 time. In secondary education, which is gymnasium, I didn't find any mentioning. A small discussion of this. I realized that my work was too big for me to perform, and it took some time also to do it. So I should have perhaps chosen a smaller project, but I wanted to investigate about Samis and how I had to learn how does it function with the Swedish curriculum. I emailed Skolverket and I just asked who can I talk to about this, and they replied that the teacher has flexibility to include the Samis and where the teacher sees fit. I replied another time that more specifically what I found, and I see a point in explicitly mentioning Samis. And then I did email Amanda Lind from the Environmental Party and the registrator at the Department of Culture of the government. In conclusion, I think my hypothesis that it was underrepresented was confirmed. I think that I will investigate this further in the future somehow. I just began to study agronomy at the Swedish Agricultural University with a rural development focus. I guess that's it. Thank you. Goodbye.